first slide about how the environment is before we get into what HR is or what HR should be doing or how to become CEOs and things like that, all right? Because today I'm going to dwell with this team here on a concept called duality, right? Because everything might look good, but again, everything might not be as good as it looks. So when we talk about the first one, protectionism, we are talking about building skills internally in a country, all right? So visa norms will become stricter in certain countries. You know, last year I was called to Ilocos Norte to help the nursing community because there were not sufficient jobs. So what should the nurses do? It's a challenge that I don't know why and how I was invited, but I did go, and we did try to create some alternate models for the nurses there in Ilocos Norte. I am thinking that this protectionism is good for a country, but might not be good for another country. So the second duality arises because we are talking of aging. The world population is aging. So if you look at America or if you look at China, the average age of employees or the workforce is about 53 years. So if that is so, if countries like Philippines are not encouraged or India, how will people work? Meaning, how will the work get done? Because people have to retire someday, right? Otherwise, we'll have the 6 generations already working, and at 90 also you'll be forced to work. Meaning, of course, for people like me, I want to retire at 53. Next is digital convergence. You know, I was in the morning when I got up and went for a jog, my daughter called and said, "Dad, you should not jog fast. You jogged very fast today." I said, sitting in India, why is my daughter talking about my jogging? How does she know? Then I found out that she is, you know, looking at my Garmin and saying that it's not good. Your heart rate is slightly higher. You ran at 7 kilometers an hour, and your ground speed, all that. I was really very confused in the morning today, but I thought it's going well because that's how the environment is. On one hand, you're having visa problems. On the other hand, you can get jobs done sitting anywhere in the world. So the duality is everywhere. That next is, if you look at the cab services today, the platform, you know, call taxi or something you have in Philippines, right? I don't know what it's called. Grab taxi. This gentleman is from Malaysia, and what he's done is just created a platform. So if you look at your old pattern, you come out of your house, take a taxi, go to a mall, you buy some stuff, come back again, take a taxi, come home, and you don't need to do that these days. You just go to the internet and buy your stuff, completely cut the people, you know, in the middle, and also you don't need money to have stores and things like that. If you look at analysis of the cost in the net versus cost in the mall, the net is slightly cheaper. So you know, we are talking about a place where the middleman will be completely eradicated in the future to come. So it's just a matter of platform. Span of machines is something extremely important, which is going to change the world. Because if you look at a young kid who comes to work, he or she wants to become a team leader. What does a team leader mean? A team leader means that there will be some people reporting to this person. So it's called span of control. With automation, with artificial intelligence, with robotics, what will happen is that there will be very few people working and robots will be working more for especially simple data entry or complex data entry kind of work or rule-based decision machines. So the aspiration of young kids will slightly come down because they don't know what to do. From leading a team to working with computers is a huge change management that will be seen in the process. This user interface is very interesting. I'm sure that all of you, or most of us here in this room, would have nephews, nieces, kids, our own children who are less than 5 years old, right? Have you ever noticed that even without being taught, these kids are so good in their laptops or the cell phone. Has anybody taught them? No one's taught them. So user interface is going to be very critical, because the same kid, when he goes to school, what happens? That kid might not be good in maths, might not be good in English. The kid who was not taught and is so good with computers, the same kid is bad with the subject. How can that be? That's the duality. And I think user interface is going to change, and we'll only be working on things that we are passionate about. Finally, whatever happens, we are talking about a value-based organization. We are talking of smart cities, smart villages, but nothing will be smart if there are no values. The value system is here to stay and will continue. I showed the film on the next generation. I also mentioned about how the environment is, the concept of duality. Everything has a diverse perspective. This one is how HR is perceived by HR itself and by external forces. Of course, Darcy did mention everything here, but I think if you look at the external world, the people, the business folks, they think that HR does not understand business. So if you don't understand business, how will you help business to grow, right? Next is prioritization, whether you will prioritize between a business call or whether you will go for a picnic, you don't know. Could be your organization is bleeding, but you still want to go for a picnic. So is it fair? These are some of the questions which will come. If you also look at the HR folks, including myself, if we look at landscape, our friends are mostly HR. 70% of our friends would be HR, 30 would be others. I don't know why this happens. It might not be true for others in other industries. Internal part, if I talk about TCS, we recruited about close to 200 MBAs from the best universities in the world. And for us, we run a program which has a rotation of all these MBAs after 6 months. So whenever I talk to a HR MBA, the person says, okay, I was in recruitment, we call it talent acquisition. I want to go to compensation. I want to go to change management. I want to do learning. Whereas the other MBAs, they are saying, I was in supply chain, now I want to go to finance. Let's send me to operations, send me to transition. So they don't have, boundaries. And these boundaries within the HR fraternity is very high, and that leads to, again, the same problem of not understanding business. That's so aspiration, agility, I think, because we are always thinking about how to satisfy people. The agile part is slightly on the lower side. All these are perceptions, might not be true, all right? So people, please don't curse me. All of you are from HR. I'm just telling you what the perception of the industry is. And I thought, I will just talk about TCS a little bit, how things are changing and how from only focusing on employees, we are now focusing on a single ecosystem. Because a vendor could be your employee, a vendor could be your shareholder, a shareholder can be your employee, a shareholder can be your vendor. The stakeholder community is completely connected, and that's how today the world is. And how do we go up the value chain? The only way to go up the value chain is by going down the customer chain. So that's certain things we need to understand. We are also talking about contextual interaction. Somebody comes to you with a problem, you don't tell that your problem is unimportant, I will solve that problem first. It has to be very contextually relevant. Next is, we were always focusing on attrition, now we are talking of prescriptive or predictive attrition. What it means is that suppose an employee, let's do a role play sort of, that an employee we have seen on an average for a particular skill attrites in 18 months. The cost of replacement will always be higher because either you have to get a person with a similar skill at a higher cost, or you need to train the person, right? So if HR just ensures that this 18 months become 24 months, there's a huge impact that HR has on business, right? How to do, I don't know, I don't have the answer. But I'm just saying that tomorrow the world is going to expect this from all of us, and this is how the landscape for TCS looks. Now if I look at CEO, a traditional CEO could be, if you look at Forbes 2000, there are about 8 Filipino companies in this list, and the SM Mall Group, SMIC heads being the 811th company in the Forbes group. So if you look at the CEO, the traits a CEO would have generally, it's not very different. You know, whether you are a traditional CEO or a next-gen CEO, it's all same, because the one in the center talks about that. But if you are next-gen CEO, you are also a cheerleader. You know, you have to bring up your team, say something. I think Darcy would know best what to do in the morning and things like that. And the same person has to be a CEO, CFO, has to be a whatever, marketing guy, sales guy, and things like that. So to be a CEO, these are some of the attributes CEOs have. So now this part, I just want to tell that it's not so gloomy for us in HR, what we have, right? Because you have to remember, when an employee comes to you, you don't know the reason why he or she is coming, right? And you have to be on your feet. What does it mean? That you have to be extremely what? Can you imagine the term? What do you have to be? When somebody comes to you, are you aware that the person is coming for this reason? Okay. Could be, yeah.
Intuition and compassion together.
Sure. I'm also talking of it as ambiguity, because you are dealing with ambiguity every single second of your life, right? You really don't know what the person is coming for. And when the person comes for, right, you are, the one thing which HR can do, no other function can do, is something called social intelligence, right? Which means that you are also understanding the emotion of the person. Where the person is coming from, you know, it might sound very odd to a finance guy that my mother was sick, so I did not come. It might be so that, you know, mother is a single mother and completely dependent on me. So the environment and connecting what's happening in the social space is extremely critical, and that HR, I think, we have. From HR, we also have a concept, you know, we are there in the moment. When someone's talking to us, we are not thinking, okay, I have a date in the evening, right, or something else. So mindfulness for HR professionals are extremely high, and this is a big factor for us to succeed in our profession. And finally, you know, I was talking about sense making, because if we don't understand where the person is coming from, we'll never be able to connect with that person. And HR today is all about engagement. It's all about, you know, the word ROI has become a passé. We are talking of ROI is return on investment. We are talking of return on effort. For every hour of effort spent by HR, what is the impact that we expect from any function that we do? So these are some of the skills we need. If we are to become CEOs, these are some of the things we need. First thing is, you know, we were talking about exposure. There is a model called the T model. I'm sure all of you know. T model means that you need to know a lot of areas and specialize in one. But when we are talking of transdisciplinary, we are meaning that HR profession needs to understand finance, marketing, sales, the business, so that your exposure is good and you can understand what kind of decisions to take. Tomorrow, it's all about, even today of course, we are talking of big data, it's a myth. and we are talking of so much of data that will be a problem. But finding trends, finding patterns in this huge data is something which we need to be appreciative of, or we need to understand. I'm sure all of you have heard of MOOC, right? Massively open online courses. But that's the buzzword in the learning space. These days people are talking of MOOCs, massively open something, systems engagement, right? And several such terminologies will come, but what I'm trying to say here is there will be possibly no new content created, because all content is there in the web. It will be about curation. What is right, what is wrong, we need to find out, because how will we find out? That mechanism is also something which HR needs to develop. And finally, it is all about dreaming big, because if you're not audacious, you can't achieve what you want to achieve. So these are some of the skills which will help us become CEOs. And I thought, in the morning without Dunkin' Donut, things are not complete. So fortunately for us, the CEO of Dunkin' Donut is also from the HR fraternity, and there are some people here mentioned who are from the HR fraternity. So it's not a lost case. I am hoping in the next 5-10 years, some of you in this room will be CEOs of your companies as well. With that, thank you very much. If you have any questions, because I had 30 minutes, I thought I'll do it in 25 minutes, 5 minutes for questions I can answer.
We'll have